Hello everyone and welcome! In today's video, I'm going to talk about how I am treating my sleep apnea using a continuous positive airway pressurization machine or a Cpap device. Now, for those that have been following my channel, or maybe not have been following my channel, I actually posted a video last fall describing what sleep apnea is, how I actually got accidentally diagnosed with it, and some of the symptoms that I was experiencing that was making my life a living hell. So fast forward, maybe about 6 months now that I've since started Cpap therapy, that there has been dramatic improvements in my energy levels, in my concentration, and more importantly, my mood. Because apparently before Cpap therapy, I was some ravaging cray-cray person. That being said, Cpap therapy is considered the gold standard in treating sleep apnea. There's a bunch of other methods of treating it as well, which I won't necessarily get into in this particular video because I actually want to show you what the equipment looks like and as well as describe what is actually happening when you have obstructive sleep apnea. First and foremost, this balloon here is going to be used to describe what a person's airway looks like. When a person doesn't suffer from sleep apnea, you see that the airway has good form and air can pass in and out of this balloon, which is your airway, fairly easily. A person with obstructive sleep apnea has some conditions where their airway is either restricted or has a bunch of excess tissue in there that hinders the flow of air. In my particular case, I've just got some extra weight I'm carrying on myself that is making my airway bigger and chubbier than it should be, and therefore when I breathe in, it collapses on itself. So, obstructive sleep apnea is somewhat like this. You breathe in, and the airway collapses on itself, and therefore you can't breathe. CO2 builds up in your body doesn't like that, it triggers an emergency response, which then makes you move around and wake up so that you can continue breathing. Now with Cpap, it's a real simple approach on treating it. An Australian doctor figured that they could apply a small amount of pressure into your body, airway pressure, so that it inflates or stents open your airways so that there's no restriction in breathing, like this. And then as you breathe, that the airway can still remain flexible, but air can move in and out of your body without any restriction. Fairly straightforward. Which then leads me to the actual Cpap machine itself. As I mentioned earlier, Cpap treatment is the golden standard on obstructive sleep apnea treatment. This unit I have before me is a ResMed AirSense 10 auto set for her Cpap machine. Now you guys are wondering, why did I get a for her machine? And it's really simple actually. It's because this machine costs exactly the same as a non-for-her version, but offers you one additional algorithm above and beyond all the other units. It can operate in fixed pressure mode, auto set mode, which is an auto-titrating mode that determines the pressures or the optimal pressures for you so that you don't have to think about it. And then an auto set for her version, which is a similar algorithm that's less aggressive than the non-for-her version, if that makes any sense. And the point I'm trying to make here is that that algorithm just works better for others, not necessarily for just females. So this is what the unit looks like when it comes from the sleep clinic or your durable medical equipment supplier. It's in this bag, not too big. It's about 6 or 7 pounds fully loaded. It makes a great storage bag, you know, when, well, you should never actually store it at home, but it's a great travel bag that protects the unit and holds everything you need. You can put your travel documentation inside, your owner's manuals if you need to, etc., etc. On the inside of the unit, we've got our Cpap machine, which is the primary blower device, and it's got all the blower and the brains and the heating plate for the humidifier all in one unit. It's about 3 pounds and the size of 2 of my hands. We've got the water reservoir here that is used for humidification. It couples with the heating plate down here. You fill it with clean distilled water. It slides on like so. And then at the top of the bag, we've got our Cpap hose. And on my particular model, I've actually got a hose called the Climate Line hose. And what it is that it's actually a Cpap hose with an electrical connection and a heating element along the length of the hose. And the reason why this is actually really good is because when you're sleeping in a really cool room or in a cold environment, that the Cpap machine itself is actually usually heating or warming up the water so that it can add humidity to the air that you breathe. Well, if it hits a cold hose, it's going to condense inside throughout the night, which then makes a god-awful bubbling, gurgling sound because it'll eventually pool in the low end of the hose. And then you experience a phenomenon called rainout where water gets all over your face because there's just so much buildup. With a climate-controlled heated hose, it prevents that from happening because the temperature from the humidifier all the way up to the face mask is consistent. So if you have the option to get a climate control hose, I suggest that you do. And so this end here, with the electrical connector, just plugs onto the back of the Cpap machine like this. And then inside the lower portion of the bag, you've got your universal power supply, which will work with any worldwide voltage, as long as you have the appropriate plug adapter. And then we've got the face mask. Now, the style I've got here is a ResMed AirTouch F20 series full face mask. I use a full face mask because I am mostly a nasal breather, but when I have nasal congestion, that I tend to end up breathing out of my mouth. And it's unfortunate because I actually do have some pretty jammed up sinuses all the time, so that's why I use this. You can actually get a nasal mask, which goes over the nose, or you can get nasal pillows, which goes against your nose, or a variation hybrid mask, which I will get into here. And so, travel bag, really good for traveling. And using a Cpap machine is fairly straightforward. You know, right before you go to bed, you put on this sexy looking face mask like this. And with the modern masks, they actually now use magnetic clasps to hold things together. So it's really easy to use. You just put that on, and then you fill up water into your humidifier if you need it, and then you plug this elbow onto the hose and hit start. And then you just basically lay down and you breathe normally, and then you eventually fall asleep, and then the machine basically takes over in managing and controlling your apnea and hypopnea events throughout the night. And so that's pretty much what Cpap therapy is about. It does take a little while to get used to because you've got this funky alien thing strapped to your face at night, and of course I have a tendency to sleep on my back and then somewhat on my side, and of course if you've never used a face mask before, that people will either take it off in the middle of the night or they knock it loose and then you get a whole bunch of air leaks, and it's just not a very pleasant experience. But I can tell you right now, folks, that since starting Cpap therapy, that it has made a tremendous world of difference, at least in my particular case. I had a mild borderline sleep apnea condition, and I thought, well, I could probably make do without a Cpap, but really, I'm glad I actually did, because, well, it just works. So there is my Cpap in a nutshell. I don't know how much more I can really talk about the machine itself. If you guys have any suggestions, I strongly encourage you to send me an email at purestation@gmail.com, and I'll try my best to answer them, or even create another vlog and talk about that in great detail. If you guys like this video, give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. And thanks for watching.